Hi there, welcome back to my workbench. Today in the bench, we have a Husqvarna 240 chainsaw. The customer says the saw is hard to start, and if it does start, it's hard to keep running. So today, together, we're gonna fix this chainsaw. Come on over here and let's get started. Husqvarna 240 X Torq. This unit is from 2012 and this saw is a 38cc. Let's dump that fuel out. If you have a saw that runs like this one does, you'll want to check your fuel. Fuel quality, looking for water, very important. This fuel, I see no water in it. It smells fresh. I don't think the fuel is the problem. Let's pull the bar and chain off this. Before you remove the clutch cover, you want to make sure your brake is unset. If you pull that off with the brake set, you won't be able to get this back on. I've done a video about this. I get a lot of people in here struggling to get these clutch covers back on. That chain catcher is bent pretty bad, so I'm going to bend it back out. A lot of chains have flown off this saw. That looks better. Let's pull that top cover off. Those are T25s. So I can see the air filter's been cleaned many times. It's filthy. It probably should have been replaced long ago. Before we go any further, let's pull that fuel filter out and just do a quick pressure test on the fuel line and the carburetor. No, the fuel line's in terrible condition. I won't be able to pressure test it. You see how that fuel line is separating? Like the inner layer is coming out. And there's the fuel filter just... Yeah. When your fuel line looks like this, you know that you're in for fuel system work. Fuel line, carburetor, air filter. Let's get started. That fuel line is super stiff. This thing's probably been sitting with ethanol fuel in it. So we need to get to the carburetor. To get the carburetor off, this handle's in the way. To get this handle off, this handle's in the way. So let's peel back a few layers here and get to our carburetor. So that was 3 T25s holding that handle on. There's a little spring down in here that will release. Remove that. And take that off. See, that screw is quite a bit shorter than that screw. You'll want to keep track of where you take these out of. There's the handle. It's not that bad. It probably sounds worse than it really is. And now we can easily get to the carburetor. T20 right there. So that throttle rod, it comes through this, that little starfish grommet. That is an expired air filter right there. Right, we're getting close to the carb here. Now we have a T20 and a couple 8 mils. There we are. We're to our carburetor. Let's disconnect the purge line and the fuel line off of the carburetor. And there's the carb with all of its trinkets. So after seeing the condition of the fuel line, I'm pretty confident in saying that what this chainsaw needs to run again is new fuel lines, a new carburetor, replace the air filter. The customer doesn't want to spend a ton of money on this, and I think we can help them out. I went and looked up parts for this, and from Husqvarna, a brand new carburetor is $98. That comes with the carb and a new primer bulb. A carb kit for this is $36. And on top of all of these prices, you would want to add shipping, and then you would want to add 13% tax, plus maybe a spark plug, definitely a new fuel filter. So this could add up pretty quickly. I think we have a solution for them. I ordered this kit from HIPAA, and I'm going to show you what comes in this kit for the price of $25 Canadian. A new spark plug, a new primer bulb, a new fuel filter, gasket, air filter, fuel and primer line, a new carburetor, and a carburetor adjustment tool. That all came in this kit for $25 overnight. I ran all three options by the customer, and they said absolutely, order the kit, install it. So we're going to install this HIPAA kit, and we're going to see how this thing runs. Let's get this thing back together. I asked the customer if they wanted me to do any further diagnostics. I could do a pressure vac test just to make sure the crankcase is sealed up tight. And they don't want to spend a lot of money on this. They were borderline going to throw this thing in the trash. So if this works, for this price, they'll be happy. So we are not going to do a pressure vac test today. So before we get started, I'm going to plug these two holes up and take this thing over to the compressed air, just clean it up a bit, and then we'll start replacing the primer line and the fuel line. There's a little bit of dirt and grunge in there. We'll get cleaned out. We're going to replace one line at a time. So I will remove one, measure it, cut it, reinstall it, and then we'll move on to the next line. I cut the new one on an angle so that it's easier to install. Let's replace it with a new one. Okay, so that one's been replaced. Now we'll do this little one. We're going to replace this primer bulb, so I will put this on the new one. And there's our fuel line we'll pull out. The fuel filter is already off. It broke off when we were looking at it. And you can see what that fuel line does. The inside of it separates from the outside of it, and it is hard. It's not flexible. It's in terrible condition. Let's pull that primer bulb out. Just pinch the back end of it, and there it is. And we'll install our new one that came in our HIPAA kit. There we go. So this line here that's part of the purge system, we'll hook this up to the top prong on the primer bulb. New gasket. So off the old carb, we need the throttle rod and the choke lever. Now we'll hook the fuel line up and the purge line up. Carefully use your pliers reattach the fuel line, reattach the purge line to the carburetor. So as you're putting this back together, you want to make sure you don't pinch any of your lines. And let's put our hardware back in. The two 8mm nuts and that T20 screw. Let's go ahead and install our new fuel filter, and then we're going to put some fuel in it and just make sure that the purge system is working. Make sure we have everything hooked up properly. Okay, so new fuel filter is installed. So we'll push the purge pump and see if our fuel is circulating. There it is. So everything looks to be installed correctly. So that purge bulb is basically purging the air out of the system and getting fuel to the carburetor. Next, we'll go ahead and install this piece again. We will slide the throttle rod through the starfish grommet. I don't know what you actually call that, but it looks like a starfish to me. And our one piece of hardware. And now we can start putting the handle back together. And remember, these two are different, and the little one, the shorter one, came out of the front. Put the rod in onto the peg, and then the spring around that little orange peg. We'll install the new spark plug that came in our HIPAA kit. Make sure it's gapped properly, and it is perfect right out of the box. Well, there, our Husky 240 is back together. New fuel lines, new purge lines, new carburetor, new fuel filter, new spark plug, new air filter. There's lots of bar oil in it. Let's take this thing outside and see if it runs any better. I'll meet you out there. So here we are back at the workbench. This thing does not run well, but why? Brand new carb, spark plug, fuel filter, fuel line, air filter. Why doesn't this thing run right? We have a vacuum leak. I seen that rotten fuel line and I assumed that we just have a fuel issue. So I shot the parts cannon at this saw, and here's how it's ending. We have a fast vacuum leak. No pressure leak. Did you notice when I had the saw running out there and I turned it over on its side, how it picked up speed? Probably a leaking crank seal. So here's what happens when I go off course of my usual diagnostic procedure and just start throwing parts at something. The customer doesn't want to spend much money on this. Barely wanted to put an aftermarket carburetor on it. They definitely don't want to deal with crank seals. We're looking at the flywheel side crank seal. We're going to put some 2-stroke oil on it, and then we're going to pull vacuum and see if it goes anywhere. Goodbye, oil. That was neat. Let's watch that one more time. And vacuum. There it goes. It held for a second. The oil held it. Now the oil's gone and we're dropping vacuum again. And that's why this thing runs like it does outside. 2 problems: a rotten fuel system and a leaking crank seal. So today's lesson is going to be, if you put a brand new carb on your chainsaw and it still doesn't run right, don't be too fast to blame the carb, because you might have other problems. In this case, I probably should have done more diagnostics, but I am under pressure to do this as quick and cheap as possible. So I skipped a few steps, jumped right into the fuel system, and we totally wasted our time. I spoke to the customer. The customer said, throw this thing in the garbage. They're going to go buy another saw. And that's the end of it. Well, here we have a Husqvarna 240 chainsaw that was dropped off with a running issue. When I examined the fuel system, I found rotten fuel line. So I jumped to the conclusion that we had fuel system issues, and that if I replaced the parts, we'd have a running saw. So we replaced the carburetor, the fuel line, fuel filter, air filter, spark plug, took this thing outside, and it would not run properly. We came back in and we did a pressure vac test, and we found a vacuum leak at the crank seal. The customer says, no go on this one, throw the thing in the garbage, and they're going to buy a new chainsaw. I will take my brand new HIPAA parts back off this thing, because there's very likely nothing wrong with them. And I have another one of these chainsaws waiting for me over there in the lineup, and maybe they'll come in handy for that one. Well, I guess it's on to the next chainsaw. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.